Hi everyone, I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable, Behavior Explained. Hi everybody, welcome to Adaptable. I'm your host, Kelly O'Horo, and I'm really happy to have you here today. I'm hopeful that the topic we're going to discuss will give you some insight into some of the things that you do when you are in conflict with your partner or with friends or, even coworkers. We tend to fall into different roles, and then when we're in conflict or when we're in disconnection, we can adapt to those conflicts and our pain and our hurt and our raw spots in ways that are not usually useful. And today we're going to talk about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Understanding this and the impact to relationships is really helpful because if you do some of these things, and most of us do, let's be honest, and you can make some changes in conflict, then you're likely to build repair faster and to circle back and to take accountability so that you can be back in connection. And so we're going to discuss the concept today. And the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is not a biblical perspective, but it's a metaphor for behaviors that can lead to breakdown in our relationships. The concept was popularized by Dr. John Gottman. He's a renowned psychologist, and he and his wife, Julie Gottman, are up in Washington, and they are really famous for so many contributions to the field of psychology and counseling related to couples. And they had an amazing experiment where they had people living in apartments and they were watching the dynamics all of the time to gather data. And so their research is really beautiful and robust. And as a result of some of their research, they identified 4 communication styles that can predict the end of relationships. So we're going to discuss where this idea comes from and what these behaviors are and ultimately how they cause disconnection. And there's going to be healthy alternatives to these strategies so that you can get back in connection. So the term 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, it sounds really heady, but it originates from the book of Revelation in the New Testament of the Bible. And these horsemen symbolize conquest, war, famine, and death. And they represent catastrophic events that bring about the end of times. I know it's really intense and heavy, but I really like the way he labels these items because when you think about behavior, it's helpful to have an association that makes sense when we recognize our patterns. And so Dr. Gottman adapted this metaphor to describe 4 destructive communication patterns in our relationships. The first one is criticism, then we have contempt, we have defensiveness, and then we have stonewalling. So let me break those down for you. First of all, criticism. This one is probably a little bit more obvious, but it involves when we attack. We attack our partner's character or personality rather than addressing a specific behavior. So it often starts with a phrase like you always or you never. So you never help around the house or you're so lazy. So these are like character assassinations and they can really create pain in your partner or in someone that you're involved with. And so criticism can make another person feel attacked. It leads to feelings of hurt. It makes them feel rejected, sometimes withdrawn. And it sets the stage for further negative interactions. And ultimately it erodes the foundation of trust and respect in your relationship. The next concept is contempt. So contempt, it's a form of disrespect. It conveys a sense of superiority over your partner or the person with whom you're in interactions with. It includes sarcasm, name-calling, eye-rolling, and mocking. And sometimes it can just be, and so this sort of contempt, it just creates disconnection in the relationship. So an example might be like, someone saying, oh, you're tired, cry me a river. So it's really dismissive. It doesn't account for someone else's experience. And if you respond with, well, I've been working all day and you just sit around not doing anything, this is a real meaty example of what contempt can look like. And in relationships where this is a continuous pattern, you can hear it in the way that people talk with one another. And it's so hard to be around if you hear contempt. It's the most damaging of the 4 horsemen. It conveys disgust, disrespect, and it always makes the other person feel worthless and despised. And it can lead to a really toxic environment where positive interactions are really rare. The third of the 4 horsemen is defensiveness. And this one, I have to be honest, this is the one that happens fast for me. I'm impulsive and I have ADHD. And so I notice this one is the one that my husband calls me out on the most frequently. So defensiveness is a way of protecting oneself from our perceived attack. It deflects blame or it makes excuses. It often involves counterattacks or falling into the victim role, which I discussed in the Cartman's drama triangle episode. So dig into that one if you want to learn more about being the victim. An example is if someone says something to you and your immediate, usually quick response is, it's not my fault. we're late, you always take forever to get ready. And if you're really quick and impulsive, this one tends to be the fast response, and the defensiveness creates disconnection. And so it prevents effective communication, it prevents problem solving, and oftentimes it escalates the conflict and ultimately prevents your partner from taking responsibility for their actions, and it leads to further disconnection. And so if this is one of the habits that you have, you want to definitely look at that because it doesn't take into account whatever is going on in you. So the next of the 4 horsemen is stonewalling. Stonewalling occurs when one partner withdraws from an interaction and they shut down and then they refuse to engage. So it often involves avoiding eye contact, walking away, the silent treatment, or even, like physically leaving the house or driving off. Now, that's not to say that a healthy boundary being set if you're in conflict where you're going to lose your crap and you're going to get really angry. Stonewalling shouldn't be confused with, I need to take a minute, I love you, I'm not my best self, and I've got to take a break. I'm going to walk around the block and I'm going to come back. That's different than someone who just disconnects from the engagement and then never circles back to resolve the conflict. And so for someone with a preoccupied, anxious attachment, stonewalling really kicks up someone's anxiety around being in disconnection, especially in a partner situation. And so this can be really painful. Not like all of them aren't painful, but this one creates a lot of disconnection in someone with an anxious attachment style. So, for example, if you're in an argument and one partner stops responding and walks away, that would be considered stonewalling, especially if it doesn't start with, let me take a break, I can't do this right now, I need to cool off. So stonewalling creates a sense of abandonment and isolation in the person that it's done to. It prevents resolution of the conflict, it leads to unresolved connection, and often increased emotional distance and frustration. So we want to look at ways that we can deal with these 4 horsemen in relationships so that we can show up better for our partners. It's not to say that we're going to be perfect all of the time, but we want to practice some things. So the first thing I'm going to explain to you is what we call the gentle startup. So instead of criticizing, you want to use a gentle startup to express your feelings and needs, and it excludes blame on your partner. So you're going to use an I statement and you're going to focus on a specific behavior. So you might say something like, I feel overwhelmed when the house is messy. Can we work together to keep it tidy? And that helps to build a culture of appreciation and respect, which leads me to the second concept that we want to get better at when it comes to eliminating these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse behaviors. So building a culture of appreciation and respect, the Gottmans describe as one of the most important parts of longevity in a relationship. And so if we have issues or problems in our moments and we're able to combat contempt by regularly expressing appreciation, gratitude, and respect for our partner, and we focus on positive interactions and acknowledge each other's efforts, this helps to make those moments of criticism or feedback easier to take without defensiveness. So an example for this, and I think this is an area that my husband and I are really, really good with, and it's an area that I focus on a lot because I want to make sure that the small things are appreciated. So this is like thanking someone for cooking or taking the trash out, or showing gratitude for gentle moments, or volunteering for something to go pick up the food, or things like that, and just really showing those appreciations can really help to build a culture of connection and compatibility. The third thing that we have to do, and this one really makes conflict a lot easier to resolve from, is taking responsibility. So instead of being defensive, you want to take responsibility for your part in the conflict. You want to acknowledge your mistakes and work towards a solution. This doesn't mean that it's easy to say, I really blew it. That wasn't my best, or when I lost my temper, or when I walked away, I'm really sorry that I did that. You deserve a better version of me in our relationship. So it's just simple, like taking responsibility. If you're late, I'm sorry that I was late. I should have managed my time better. And this can help people not fall into a critical role as well. And so we want to make sure that we're taking responsibility for our errors. The next thing we want to work on is self-soothing and re-engagement. And so it's not anyone else's job to make sure that you're okay, or your emotions are out of balance and you're feeling dysregulated. So when you feel overwhelmed and you're tempted to stonewall, you have to practice your own self-soothing techniques like deep breathing, or taking a short break, or taking a quick walk. Then you want to re-engage in the conversation with a calmer mindset. So that might look like I need a moment to calm down. Can we take a break and talk about this in, let's say, 10 minutes? I'll circle back. If I'm not ready in 10 minutes, and maybe even set a timer to hold yourself responsible, then I need to come back and say, it's been 10 minutes and I'm going to need a little bit more time to kind of cool off. So when we recognize and we address those four horsemen in our relationships, that we can prevent the disconnection and we can build healthier, more fulfilling connections with our partners. Remember, any work that we do in relationships, it's not about not having conflict. We're going to have conflict in our relationships. The point in relationships isn't that we don't have conflict, it's that we are able to take accountability, we can understand our part in the dynamics, and we can circle back and take ownership, and we can course correct with healthy communication and honor and respect towards our partners or the people that we're in relationship with, because these things can happen even outside of just our primary partnerships. Ultimately, conflict isn't what determines the success of a relationship. It's just how we manage it. So the more work that you do to understand your part in things, the better you get at circling back. And I always tell couples that I work with in couples counseling, it's not that we're going to eliminate conflict. It's that we're going to help you identify what's happening faster. We're going to help you understand your part of the cycle that you fall into, the negative interaction cycle. And then we're going to really dig in to figure out what is motivating that. What are our pain points and our raw spots in our history? We're going to circle back and we're going to take accountability so that we can get into connection. And so ultimately, couples that are good with this circling back part, they have much healthier relationships and they have better positive interactions. They have constructive communication patterns and ultimately happier and healthier relationships. So I hope that this little nugget from John Gottman gives you some insight into some of the destructive patterns that you show up with in relationships. And when you're hurt and when you have a raw spot that got hit, that you're able to really look at those patterns and use one of these strategies to return to connection faster, to demonstrate healthier communication patterns, to address things in your relationships that are problematic so that you can come up collectively with solutions. It'll never steer you wrong.